welcome to this week's hashtag Toe to Toe. This week I'm joined by Boxing News' Matt Christie and Spencer Fearon. Guys, Saturday night, Matt, you were watching it from the comfort of your own home while me and Spencer were freezing ringside.
Yes, it was a bit cold out there, right?
How did you find it?
I thought from Joshua's point of view, it was a perfectly good performance. I think arguably it's the most mature performance. And fans may not like to hear it, but I think we may see more of that from Joshua than what we've seen before.
Spencer, you've got a bit of a different opinion, haven't you?
I thought that, and you know what, the reason why is this. When I was there and I watched it, I thought it was a mediocre performance for the simple fact that I so expected Joshua to get a late round stoppage. But then going home and watching it, do you know what I mean? I thought it was a very, very mature performance. And allowed what Lennox Lewis started to do when he ended up with Emmanuel Stewart. He just understand I'm going to do enough to win, but also to give myself longevity. Because if you do, people expect every time that any Joshua fights now that we're going to see Klitschko Joshua. We're not going to see Klitschko Joshua every time. We're going to get a more contained performance and a more professional performance. But well done to Anthony Joshua anyway. Josie Parker should be given a lot of credit. That guy got phenomenally fast hands.
The referee got a lot of criticism as well.
Quite rightly so. Quite rightly. Who was that? Who was that referee?
It's an Italian, wasn't he?
Yeah, listen, whoever he was, he didn't do a good job, man. Come on, let's be real.
No, he didn't. He didn't do a good job. I mean, how much of it was kind of wanting to make a bit of a name for himself? How much of it was the fact that he really hadn't had any experience close
to a world
heavyweight title fight?
Yeah, of that magnitude. How much was it?
So
75,000? Come on, that was terrible.
But I do think that it was, as much as people were saying, well, he's pulling Joseph Parker on every time Joseph Parker's getting close, he's pulling them both away. He did neither of them any favours, and as a consequence of the referee, I think the spectacle was affected quite dramatically, particularly those that wanted to see a slugfest, because that was never ever going to break out with that referee in the middle of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll get started. Our first tweet today is Raps on TV. Can you see AJ managing to keep hold of 3 belts if the Wilder fight doesn't happen soon, or can you see him having to drop one through boxing politics? Spencer, do you want to start us off on this one?
No, I don't think, because I'm saying it's all about intergenerational income and wealth, and Anthony Joshua will generate that kind of money where people, the governing bodies, if they're on their percentage, they was to make it go elsewhere, they would not generate that kind of money. Anthony Joshua would allegedly made £16 million on a weekend, right? And they're getting a percentage of that. They ain't gonna get that money elsewhere. If there's somebody else wins that title, they're going to be ending up. Listen, Josie Parker, highest purse prior to that was $1 million, right? Right. If you look at Wilder made allegedly $3.5 mil, $4 mil, right? Anthony Joshua's making 5 times that money. So therefore, they will behave themselves and not strip him of that title. Trust me, because of how much money that he generates. He will not get stripped, I guarantee you. And because it's all about money, he will be sound with his belts. Oh, you agree, yeah? That means a lot. Thank you very much, man.
What do you think, Matt?
I think you agreed with me.
I do agree. The thing is, though, it's such a complicated business, and I think what you will see, if he does keep all the 3 belts, is fights that won't make the fans particularly happy, because you're going to have to fill all these mandatory requirements. Yeah. It's a very difficult business. You look at how Vladimir Klitschko, some of the opponents he was having to fight, how the reaction was there. It wasn't positive, but he was doing it purely to keep hold of the belts.
No, it wasn't. He was doing it because there were easy options.
Well, when the number one contenders. They may have been the easy options, but they're also his only option really at that point. But the thing is, I really, really hope that we come to a point where someone like Anthony Joshua turns around and says, actually, I don't need these belts. I'm the world heavyweight champion. I don't need these governing bodies telling me who I've got to fight. I'll fight who I feel deserves to have a fight, and who will create the best fights. One day, hopefully, we'll get to that, because the governing bodies are a bit of a problem, let's face it.
Thomas Lyons has tweeted in, it's unlikely the AJ Wilder fight will happen next, so who do you suggest both should fight? Both should remain active until the fight is signed and sealed. Does AJ necessarily need a debut fight in the US against someone like Jarrell Miller?
Do you know what? I think if the Wilder fight is not going to happen next, I think rather than filling out another stadium over here against an opponent that perhaps is not really deemed a threat, a Jarrell Miller fight over in New York to boost his profile is a very, very sensible option. If we know that the Deontay Wilder fight is going to happen next, I think there's no harm in that at all.
I would like to see it. But recently I've heard like 50 Cent, 50's my boy, you know that, right? 50 Cent, seriously, he made a movie with my cousin, right? Dead Man Running. 50 Cent tweeted out and he posted on his Instagram that Jermell Miller was screaming out to fight Deontay Wilder. And Deontay Wilder said, I don't need to fight this guy, knocked him out inspiring, or he beat him up inspiring or something like that. And then Jerome Miller said, I was dehydrated, I went on a run before I sparred you. So that could be a fight. So maybe that fight. But I would like to see Anthony Joshua make his American debut. And who better to make your debut against a loud-mouth American that likes to give it. And Jerome Miller is very good at this, right? So that'd be entertaining. And plus, and Jerome Miller can actually fight. He's a very tough, durable kind of guy. He's like a slightly better version of Derek Chisora. That's how I see him. Yeah. You know what I mean? And he's even got the kind of Blanca hairstyle from Street Fighter. They're kind of slightly better looking. But anyway, so that fight, I would like to see that fight. And Eddie Hearn's got Jermell Miller on his books, so then that'd be an easy fight to make.
Can we just go back to you saying that you are friends with 50 Cent?
Yeah, he's my boy, man.
Really?
Swear down.
Are you sure?
Okay, what was it? A few years ago, 50 Cent made a movie with my cousin who directed it. I got to meet him on set loads of times. 50's my boy.
Okay.
You know how it goes.
All right. Well, we'll move
Dead
on.
Man Running. Go watch the movie.
We'll see. Norman Barton's tweeted in, my feeling is the Bronze Bomber fight isn't going to happen anytime soon. Looking ahead for the next opponent. Dylan White has improved a lot since December 2015. Will he provide a tougher test than Povetkin? They have a bit of history too. Matt?
Yeah, it's I think what I would like to see, if we're going to include Povetkin in the mix, and I guess we've got to, then a Dylan White Povetkin fight. Let's make that as an eliminator. Let's see what happens. I think that would be a lot of fun as well, and I think it would be very, very good indicator of how far Dylan White's come.
What did you think of the performance at the weekend?
Of Povetkin, I thought he looked old. David Price hits you, you're going to know about it. And he certainly did. I mean, it was a shocking moment, and I think, as boxing news editor, I've got to be impartial.
Yeah.
But as a British fight fan, I think everybody in the backstory to that contest, everybody wanted to see David Price win. He performed wonderfully, and he came so close in that third round.
Listen, I'm telling you, David Price should be commended because there must be a lot of demons or people niggling here. Oh, you can't fight. Oh, you can't take a shot. Do you not remember, like a few years back now, 4 or 5 years ago, David Price was the Anthony Joshua of our country. He was a guy that was a flag bearer to say that he was big enough, strong enough to go take on both Klitschko's and beat them. David Price, seriously, well, regardless of whatever, how you fought so gallantly in that fight, especially when you got knocked down, you got back up, and you hit Povetkin, and just imagine if he had that Deontay Wilder mentality, like when Deontay Wilder has you going, he rushes in. If you'd have rushed him then, just before the bell went, we don't know what would have happened. You know what? David Price should be commended, a beautiful human being, and I hope that you champion life no matter what you do.
Steve Parsons has tweeted in, Dillian Whyte has shown he is happy to fight anyone. How tough a fight do you see Kubrat Pulev being? He obviously brings a very decent record. He's
a sound fighter. Was he Bulgarian, right? He's a very, very sound fighter, well-timed fighter. And to think when he lost against Klitschko, I'm not saying he's a freak, but he hurt Klitschko prior to get him knocked out, and it was like a sweeping left hook that hits him. So he's a very accomplished guy. But I'm going to take this about Dillian Whyte, and I want you guys to listen to me. Right? Me and Matt was speaking about it on the train up here, and Matt was saying, like, it's good to see Dillian Whyte in condition. But I'm saying this, tell me a heavyweight that has a punch repertoire like Dillian Whyte in the world today. Look at his punch repertoire. You're thinking now, I know you're thinking. Nobody has a better punch repertoire than Dillian Whyte. He puts them together really nice. I told you it's going to take about six to 5 fights before we're going to see the real Dillian Whyte as he merges with Mark Tibbs, who's a very, very good coach. And now we're seeing it. I was impressed. I don't care how bad people want to say, Lucas Brown was. We weren't saying Lucas Brown was bad prior to the fight. He went in there, he done a very, that was a magnanimous victory there. And the sky's the limit for Dillian Whyte. And he's believing in himself now. So, you know what I mean? All credit in the world to Dillian Whyte. Name me a heavyweight with a punch repertoire. Who? There's not one guy who throws combinations like him. He's got the best combination puncher. He's the best combination heavyweight in the world.
You were laughing there, Matt, as he was talking.
I think sometimes when I'm with Spencer, I just get so happy that the laughing is the only output.
You can't help but laugh at him.
Yeah, but I mean, in regards to Pulev Whyte, I think it would be an exceptionally hard task for Dillian Whyte. I think Pulev is very, very talented fighter. However, perhaps slightly overrated as a consequence of kind of being at the top or thereabouts for such a long time in the governing body rankings without really beating anybody to deserve that placing.
Who would you like to see him face if you could pick someone for Dillian?
Povetkin.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like that fight too, just to get revenge for David Price. That's how we're rolling. Seriously.
Okay, well, moving on, we've got, with Canelo pulling out of the rematch, who would you put in with Triple G, unification with Billy Joe Saunders, rematch with Daniel Jacobs or someone else?
I mean, the dream scenario now is for Billy Joe Saunders just to slip in and take that fight. I understand why he won't want to do that. It is still short notice for a fight of that magnitude. Danny Jacobs again would be a much better option than some of these other guys that are being mentioned at the moment. But I think what we will see is a far inferior opponent than Canelo. But what I will say and what I want to say is that there is no way that Canelo should have been allowed to go ahead with this fight anyway. And it is not, even though it's a disappointment we're not going to see the rematch, it is certainly not a disappointment that we're not going to see a guy go into a fight of this magnitude who has just failed a drug test.
Because there's a lot of controversy around that on Twitter saying that the fight should still go ahead.
No, it shouldn't. The fight shouldn't go ahead. I'm glad that the fight isn't going ahead. The governing body should be commended that the fight isn't going ahead. Like, come on, man. You failed a drug test. Now, regardless whether it's contaminated meat or not, you are Canelo. You could fly meat in from anywhere in the world because you are a multi-millionaire. If they say 1 in 3 people in Mexico watch you when you fight, that's the gravitas that you have, and you contaminate meat, maybe you did. You could have. Right, fair enough, but you failed a drug test. So call the fight off, reschedule it when you've not failed a drug test, and then we'll be safe.
Okay, so will the fight still go ahead in September?
Of course it will.
I suspect it will, but what we absolutely need in order for this fight to go ahead and be clear of any kind of scandal whatsoever is we need Canelo to prove that he unknowingly took contaminated meat, rather than just going off into the background and kind of saying, well, I'm clean,
yeah.
and all these governing body bosses say,
you know, they go under a lie detector test. You know that when it's very serious. They happened to Lucas Brown. Lucas Brown was telling us when he passed the lie detector test, right? So I have no reason that but they put you under a lie detector test, and I think what they should do is make the lie detector test like pay-per-view. They can make even more money from it because people will pay to. I would pay to watch that just to find out. Did you do it? It'd be kind of like a Jeremy.
We should get you to do it.
Yeah, I'll come in, I'll host it. You know what I mean? Our lie detector says, you were lying. I'm just saying, I don't know whether you're not, but I'm just saying, you know.
Okay, well, that's it for this week. My thanks to Matt and Spencer. Tune in next week for more #toe-to-toe or check out iTunes for the podcast.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.